Welcome to the BuildX channel. Today we'll be taking a long overdue first look at the Buddy Bus, our latest project to convert a retired Windsor transit bus into a mobile warming room for the homeless. Homelessness is a complex and challenging issue that affects millions of people all over the world. It's not just a problem of lacking a roof over one's head, but a complex interplay of poverty, mental health, addiction, and lack of affordable housing overall. As a company, we have made it our mission to do something about it. While our background is modular housing, we wanted to create a more immediate solution to help address the needs of now, without all the red tape of a traditional building or shelter. We'll be touching on the issue of homelessness and housing affordability in later episodes, but for now, let's take a look at the bus.
So this is the control panel, the rear control panel. This is engine control only. Now we have a number of gauges that are missing. Looks like it's been stripped for parts for other units. The big things we have on here are going to be your diagnostics port, which is going to connect directly to the diesel engine or the Cummins ECU. You have your engine compartment light. Some of the bulbs are missing or broken. You have your ignition. So what this does is it designates where the ignition signal is going to come from. So whether you want ignition from the front driver's control panel, or if we want ignition to occur, or the signal to come from this control panel here. With it in the rear position, we can actually then go and start it. The battery is currently dead, so I don't think we'll get any ignition. But that's kind of the gist. The only gauge left, it looks like, is a temperature gauge. But the unit will actually not run even if you start it at the front from this gauge here, or from that button there, if it's in the off position. Same with the start. If it's not correctly set, the front ignition or the front start button won't actually work. So this whole unit kneels. It's a kneeling bus, so what that means is the whole thing actually lowers down. It's all airbag suspension. So what we've done to ensure that everything is stable is we've hooked up a compressor, and we're actually able to keep the air lines and the air tanks at 120 psi consistently. And what that does is ensures that everything remains level. Obviously we don't want to be working on it, and it's sagging, and if you leave it overnight it does actually sag on the one side. We're not too sure why that is. Over here we have what I consider the main data bus, or the main computer. Now this is the main computer for the automation side, from what I understand. The ECM, so the electronic control module, isn't actually contained in here. It's inside, which I'll show you in a bit. This is all the logic controllers for all the various systems. The one thing I've found, even though this is a 2004, is that everything is automated. It's quite crazy how much automation goes into these units, specifically all of these different logic controllers, or however you want to call them, different controllers for different systems. But the one thing that's super beneficial is all of these diagrams. So these diagrams actually show what each thing is for. So one thing that is part of this data control center are the transmission retarder switch and the auxiliary heat switch. This transmission retarder is basically your exhaust brake, or your transmission brake, from what I understand. I could be wrong. And your auxiliary heat controls whether or not the auxiliary diesel heater that I showed earlier is on or off. So we're now in the cab of the bus. As you can tell, we're still doing some work. Things are disassembled everywhere. We have the illuminator sign that's still disassembled as we're trying to reprogram that. So we'll walk through the controls. First, your master switch. You'll hear everything start to power up. And you'll get your lights. As you can see here, that's your air gauge. As everything pressurizes, that's actually going to go down. From what I understand, it's actually taking air from the reserve tank, the air reserve tank, and it's now filling it, or filling rather the auxiliary tanks for the airbags and the doors. So your main view here, the main door is here, so we will air that up. Now we have our door control. So this is also air. So now it's in the closed position, and you can see we have closed doors. And if we open it up, they open. So for the master release, or rather the air purge, what we do to keep those open is we open that valve and it releases the air. So now when the bus shuts off, it will not close the doors, which is an automatic feature. So going to the back, I'll turn the lights on so we can see a bit better. We have our climate control. This is going to be null and void because we're replacing it with a heat pump. This is the booster pump, or the booster fan rather. From what I can gather, that up there is the booster fan. And what this does is it actually pulls air from the vents. So all of these are vents. It was closed in, we have it open, and we're putting wood paneling back, so that acts as an air vent. And this booster pump for the summer actually pulls the cold air further down the line in case the air conditioning fan isn't strong enough. It pulls it and blows it out the window, or in the vent there. These two are going to be your fan controls. So that's fan there. This was the interior speaker, or exterior interior speaker. What that is for the door chime. So we've taken that out, so it's not needed. This is your driver light. So your driver light is up there. As you can see, the lens is taken off because I replaced the bulb, and I replaced it with a 12 volt, and this is a 24 volt system. As you can see, I also replaced the bulb in that light, so that's the fair box light, and that does work. Going back to the switches here, we have the lights. So this is for the lights when they were in here. They were all incandescent tube bulb style, so that would turn them all on. And then there's a cleaning mode. So what the cleaning mode would do is it would actually turn on one side of the lights, or one side of the bus, so that any cleaning could take place. Back here as well, you'll notice the video system event. What we think that was is for the security cameras. So there are 4 security cameras in the bus all throughout. So we think that was just a marker system for marking a significant event. It's been uninstalled by the Windsor Transit, so we didn't actually get to see what that unit consisted of. Here you have your gear selector. So this is a Voith or Voith transmission. So it's not a lot of, you may be familiar with like an Allenson transmission, and it's the digital display with the selector. So this is their version of that, which is just push buttons. Really simple. Here, again, master switch, super straightforward. So you have your park, your night, so this is all the lights, your day, and then your off. So this actually acts as the ignition as well. So when this is in the off position, the engine will be off as well. Now the caveat to that is this doesn't apply if the ignition switch in the rear engine compartment is in the rear position. So the control is then delegated back to the rear ignition, and this can be off and it doesn't matter. When it's in forward mode, this actually will, or the driver mode, or the front cabin mode, this will then control the ignition. You have your dimmer switch here, pretty simple. The door control, haven't quite figured that out. Obviously it's very simple. You have your front and rear, but then you have rear and front. So I don't know if they're just two options to do the same or what, but I don't know the difference between front and rear and front. Here is your engine start. So with the ignition switch on, you can actually turn that on and start the engine. Again, this is dependent on the switch in the rear having been put into the front start position and the ignition being on. This is your high idle switch, so if it's going to be sitting or idling, you engage the high idle, so that'll set it at about 1,000 RPMs. And then your engine emergency override, still haven't figured out what that is, no idea. Moving forward, you have your parking brake, because this is an air-equipped vehicle, this is an air brake. You have your temperature controls. We're not sure if the original temperature control system for the entire bus is also controlled through this, or if this is just the front cabin. No idea. And then your windshield wipers, which is, yeah, pretty simple. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, they also spray. Down here, you also have your foot controls. So the foot controls, obviously there's no pedal, or there's no gear column turn signal thing, and so it's actually delegated to foot controls. So as you can see there, it turns on the light. Can't really see the shadow, but that's on. And then same with your left. And then the top one is actually your high beams. And that's just to make it easier for the driver to not have to worry about anything, and they can use their foot. Which also means that your brake and your gas are on this side, which is normal. Moving along, you have, like I mentioned earlier, your air gauge and your speedometer with your indicator lights in the center. As you'll notice, there's actually no gas gauge. I've been able to pull the data from the ECM, so that's down there, a Cummins ECM data link adapter, so that will plug into my computer. And I've been able to figure out that I think there is a gas sensor, a gas level sensor. So the next project will be putting in an aftermarket gas gauge so that we can see the gas level. The rationale behind why there's not a gas gauge in transit buses is because they fuel up every night at the depot, and there's no need for them. And this is a pretty common feature on transit buses, so no gas gauge. Moving down to the other control panel here, that's disassembled. We have our hazard lights, and then step well heater, so that's the heater down there. There's a little step well heater. This is your kneeling feature. So this will actually kneel the bus and then bring it back. And that's all air powered in the airbags. This is going to be the wheelchair ramp because the engine is not running and everything's not powered up and all the sensors haven't been calibrated as part of the normal startup procedure when the engine starts. That ramp is actually not working. But when you start the engine and cycle all the doors and everything gets to calibrate, this extends the wheelchair ramp. So what happens is this will actually flip all the way up and go down as a wheelchair ramp. That is the gist of the driver's control console area. So moving back to the back of the bus, I mentioned the air release for the front door. This is actually the air release for the rear door. So what this does is same as the front. The computer will automatically want to close these doors when the power is off for X amount of minutes. So if you were to want to keep them open, you keep that air release open. Or if there was an emergency, this actually had a panel that went on it, and you could remove that panel, turn that valve, and then you'd be able to manually open it. In the back here, we have another control center. This is predominantly for heating, air conditioning, and the transmission. So as I mentioned, the Voith Transmission, still not sure how to pronounce that. There's actually a control for economical or power, or more power on the transmission. Not sure what those specs are or what it tunes to, but apparently it does. And then again, more diagrams, which is super helpful. These were made to be maintained consistently, which means the mechanic was always at the forefront of thought, which is great, and it helps with maintaining all of these systems. As you can see here, there's just a slew more of these microcontrollers, which do a whole bunch of different things. The other thing is breakers, which is great, helpful. It's not just blowing a fuse and throw it out and try again, or trying to find out what's wrong. These breakers will actually audibly pop like that, and they can be reset quite easily, which is great. The downside of all this is there is a ton of wiring for various systems. So with the automation, we're not sure how it affects everything, and that's why the air conditioning being removed is going to be interesting, simply because we don't know the cascading effect if the automation system is going to prevent movement, for example, because of an air conditioning fail event. So moving down further, we have the rear engine compartment seat that gets removed, and so this gives you access to the the front of the engine compartment without having to disassemble much. It's just a few bolts. The seat itself is pretty simple. It's noise deadening, which is good. I think it's filled with insulation, because it's definitely noticeable when that thing is on. There's also a rubber seal around it. But here, from what I understand, is the it's like a turbocharger, if I'm getting that right. Not a diesel mechanic, so I apologize if I'm wrong. This again is a Cummins ISX, I believe. So it's easy to maintain, which is great, and a lot of access points, which is good for a bus that has everything so compact. Thanks so much for watching this very brief tour of the Buddy Bus, and I look forward to showing you a lot more as we progress. There will be a lot more videos to come of the various subsystems and how we're doing the conversion. It's going to be an exciting project, so stay tuned to the BuildX channel.